Welcome to Cover Book Beat. I'm your host, Roger Nichols. Our guest today is a lifelong educator, teacher, principal, district director, art lover, and writer. Laurel Schmidt is also a nationally recognized expert who has helped thousands of docents and museum educators master the art of leading conversations that have museum visitors and students longing for more. She is a consultant for the Guggenheim Museum, the Met, and MoMA in New York City, and presents at their annual Teacher Institute on the Arts. Now, she previously published several nonfiction books and has written articles for national journals. Now, she's turned her hand to fiction and written a provocative novel exploring the biggest issue of our lives that we're all afraid to talk about. The book is titled How to Be Dead, with the startling subtitle, A Love Story. Now, if that title intrigues you, the book will delight you even more. We're very pleased to welcome Laurel Schmidt.
Thank you for having me.
Was there a particular incident or series of incidents that triggered the decision to move into fiction?
Yeah, well, yes, it's a very interesting origin story because this is my first novel. I didn't set out to write a novel. I certainly didn't set out to write this novel. What was happening is I was approaching retirement age, and I looked at my mother. She was 90 years old, no sign of stopping. And I thought, I have no idea how she did that. All I knew how to do was work 2 or 3 jobs at a time. And so I thought, you know what, I better bone up on this longevity stuff. I need to do some research and find out how I can stay alive. So I started reading lots and lots of books and research papers, and then I did some blog writing. And I thought, well, maybe someday I'll pull all this together and publish something to help other people who are older. And one day, the entire project was hijacked by this wonderful fictional character, Frances Bacon. She literally landed in my head. It was like a meteor hit. There was the main character, Frances Bacon, the title, How to Be Dead, and the killer taxi. And it was all there in an instant. And as a writer, when something like this happens, this is special. It's a gift. So I grabbed a pencil and paper and just wrote and wrote and wrote. And then I sat down at my computer and the first sentence just popped out and I was hooked. So my quest for longevity turned into a thinking person's comedy about the afterlife.
No, beautifully. Now, if you don't mind, in order to give the audience an idea of the basic plot, I'm going to read the summary that was sent that I think is really quite good.
Sure.
And let me do that here to get you. When a popular longevity guru steps in front of a New York City cab, she's catapulted into the afterlife at the tender age of 65, where she discovers not heaven or hell, but the university of the afterlife, and a second chance for true love, but only if she can learn how to be dead and convince a jury of her past lives that she is worthy of getting another chance to live. That setup is so cool. One of the first things we tell writers who are starting out, write what you know. So do you have any tips about the afterlife, inside information we should be asking you about?
I have only what all of us have, which is speculation.
Yes.
And I think hope. And this is what's so fascinating about the afterlife, that I think it's very intriguing to people. For one thing is because we're so, human beings, we're very egotistical. We're very egocentric. Mm-hmm. And we can't imagine ourselves not living, not being alive. What do you mean? I'm not going to be here. Yeah. And so even faced with the reality of mortality, we make up stories to say it isn't so, that somehow we're going to keep going on. I mean, look at the Egyptians. They built those amazing pyramids, and that was just a testimony to their belief in this afterlife. And so it's just so human to want more, whether you want a longer life here or you want another life after. And so that's what people make up stories about. And I also think coupled with the afterlife is this idea of reincarnation. Mm-hmm. And that is so intriguing and attractive because we get a second chance. I mean, okay, this life didn't work out so great, but we get to come back again. And maybe this time we'll be famous, or we'll be really a genius, or will be wonderful, a wonderful mother or something. And so that idea of a second chance is very, very consoling in a way. And in the story, Frances, she gets a second chance at love, true love, but only if she can master her fears and learn the lessons she should have learned on Earth. And if she does that, then she can learn how to be dead, then she can live again.
And really, that's the crux of it. And she's a prickly personality. Um,
I
I
think.
first thought the word sassy, but I think it gets beyond sassy into snarky at some points.
She's feisty. She's
Yes.
very feisty. It's
Yeah.
true. She's got a mouth on her. I mean, it was one of the reasons that I had such a good time writing this book. First of all, fiction is so liberating. I mean,
Mhm.
it's just a playground for ideas and imagination and all. But Frances is, I will admit it, she is my doppelganger in many ways, except the safety is off the trigger. I
Yeah.
mean, she's got a mouth on her. She likes to drink. She's very, and she has a lot of problems with authority. A lot of problems with authority, and she doesn't. Um, she won't accept the status quo without putting up an argument. And so for me, it was so much fun to write that, to
Hmm.
be able to just act out. Um, but it was also the case, the other side of Frances that I really loved exploring is that her job in the afterlife, her assignment in the University of the Afterlife, is that she has to learn the lessons she didn't learn when she was on Earth. And she has to look at her flaws. And writing the book was a way for me to look at my flaws from a safe distance.
Ah.
And yeah, so um, and it was also the case that when I was writing it, I was finishing this novel during the lockdown,
Hmm.
and so it was such a relief. It was such a gift to be able to escape for 4 or 5 or 6 hours a day
Hmm.
into the afterlife and follow these characters around and see what they wanted to do next, and I could just be there in this adventure, and then when at the end of the day, I would look up and see our poor sad world.
Yeah. It sounds as if this is really organically evolving. It was a pantser rather than a plotter, as they say in the seat of the pants versus plotting it out all in advance. Um, but it really does not feel like a first novel. It really feels like it came fully fleshed. I don't know how many times you had to rewrite or anything, but it doesn't show any of that.
Thank you. Well, I think one thing that explains some of that is I'm a huge consumer of novels. I've read novels all my life, many novels, and loved it for the very same reason. I
Hmm.
could go into another world, be in
Yes.
another world, experience another person. So I was very familiar with it experientially, but I was not familiar with the actual mechanics of good novel writing. And so I did study. I studied structure and storytelling and all of the basics. I found some really good some very good teachers. I read a lot of books about it, um, and and so there were actually several parts. That was one challenge. The second challenge was that when you get an idea like Frances, who just
Hmm.
landed in my head, she came with so much baggage. And then she had all these other characters who were attached to her in one way or another. And so almost every day when I would start writing, there would be these people showing up and there would be floods of ideas. And even when I wasn't writing, if I was driving in the car or working out at the gym, ideas would come and I was constantly writing things down on scraps of paper or something. So you get this flood of ideas. And at that point, one of the big challenges as a novelist is the to develop your tolerance for ambiguity,
Mm.
because there are a lot of times when you're just swimming in the ideas.
Yeah.
And but then the third part, which I think goes more to how organic this was and how much it sprang from my own life, is that this is this came from my life. This book has a lot of experiences that are right out of my life. Family crack-ups, love affairs that were completely ridiculous, grief and loss, and not feeling good enough, not feeling smart enough. And it's very, very rich material if you are brave enough to face it.
Yes.
And so and there was actually a writer who told a group of writers once, she said, if you really want to write about and use your life and emotions and all that, she said, you have to write like you're an orphan. And that's true. You have to just be able to say, this is what it is. It doesn't matter how hard it feels or what people think of it. This is me. And I was able to expose things, to write things that were secrets, basically. I had not told anyone. And it felt very good to bring it to light. But it's also, the challenge is, can you see your keyboard through the tears? Because there are times when it was extremely cathartic, and I was very moved, and there were times when I was laughing.
Well, certainly there were times when, as a reader, I felt both of those emotions very strongly. And I want to ask, have you shared, what kind of reaction have you been getting to your spouse and or friends who might see themselves in there, or your reaction to them?
Well, my spouse understands that this book is really a love letter to him. And he's deeply touched by it. Other people's curiosity goes more to, so Laurel, how much of that is really you? And I just say yes.
Excellent.
So that's their curiosity is about how much of this is actually autobiography, and
Can they
it's up
pull
to
out the
them.
interesting bits and talk about that for a while? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I, one of the things I do when I read is I take copious notes. I had like 12 pages in notes from your book,
Wow.
and I recategorized them. And one of the things that my categories is cool stuff.
Oh.
And the first thing that struck me as early as page 7 was her battle cry, "Geezer up." I want a T-shirt that says "Geezer up" on it. I think there's money to be made here.
If I ever develop a merch, as they say,
Yeah.
aspect to my website, I guess that would be one. The other T-shirt that I actually have, which I adore, it says latest reincarnation.
Oh, nice,
Yeah,
nice.
yeah, I love that one. A friend, the woman who actually read the book, because this book is out as an audiobook. Her name is Barbara Rosenblatt. She's a wonderful, wonderful reader. And she said, I want that T-shirt.
Well,
Yes. So Geezer Up did come to me early on. And it's just the idea that, people say man up and you're going to lawyer up and all that. And geezer is just such a maligned word.
yes.
And it's the opposite of anything powerful. And so I thought, yeah, geezer up.
It's great. It's great. Another, if you don't mind me quoting a couple of other lines that I found
I
really
love it.
appreciative.
No, I'm having a great time.
The misery industrial complex. That's a public service sector, no doubt. That's
Yes.
wonderful. I don't know where that came from, but it's so perfect.
It came from, actually, and again, that's from part of my background, is I was in teaching, but much of my teaching was social work. It was social work. It was various communities, and my very last job as a director, I was in charge of problems. If problems came to the district, parents had problems, students had problems, they would just buzz my office, and I was the first face people saw. And so I understand that there's so much need. There's so much need out in communities, and schools are doing it, and social workers are doing it, and parents, and all kinds of people are attending to it. But the misery goes on. And so the misery industrial complex is a feature of our society for the reasons we all know.
I also love it. You taught me a new word, which is wonderful. Cosmopsis. The inability to
Oh,
choose a course of action from all the possibilities. I knew the concept. I've lived the concept, but I didn't know the technical term for it. So I
yeah,
appreciate
it's a
that.
good one. Yeah, I know. I love that word.
Yeah, it's a great deal. There's quite a bit of religion in this. And Frances is not entirely, how shall I put it, she's somewhat hostile to religion, at least organized religion.
Right. She's Frances is very spiritual. I think
Hmm.
you will probably admit that. She's
Absolutely,
very
yes.
spiritual. So she's a spiritual person and she's a seeker. And because she's a thinker, Frances is a very smart person. She's compassionate and she's loving. And yes, she's got a mouth on her and she's snarky, but she's she's very smart and she thinks about things. And her experiences with religion were multiple religions were a part of her seeking. She was trying to figure things out. She was trying to make sense of life. She was trying to make sense of the fact that her father died young and he was gone and she missed him. And where could she find solace? And what she didn't, where she didn't find it was in organized religion because she saw how people were asked to believe things that didn't make sense. People were promised things that didn't pan out. People and that religions were a source, instead of a source of comfort to the world, they became a source of strife as one religion tried to supersede another religion. One religion was concerned someone else was absolutely dead wrong. And so they were condemned. And so what she saw was all the trouble that organized religion caused in the world. And she rebelled against it. She didn't want to accept it.
You have a section, and I don't want to give away too much of the plot, but there is one point at which she is exposed to three different groups: the Tolkien geeks, and the religious freaks, and the trolls. And her reactions to all of them are really special. I'm just when people read the book, look out for that section because you will love it. Yeah, it's great.
It is. It was one of the sections that I had so much fun writing, because again, she's she's such a contradiction because she's a social worker. She spent all her life helping people, and yet she takes instant dislike to certain people and
Hmm.
can't she cannot keep quiet and she cannot resist taking them down if she can.
That's right. And I, for one, salute her on some of them. Absolutely, because she says things that a lot of us feel what can't feel comfortable expressing. And so I think
Right,
there's a cathartic, for the readers, a cathartic aspect to the book as
right.
well.
Which
So
is what I was saying about writing. It was for me to be have her as my doppelganger and be able to say things that no, I wouldn't say those things in public normally, but
yeah,
it was a lot of fun.
yeah. I also note because I look in the categories pop culture references, of which there are many. Monty Python's Always Look on the Bright Side of Life was perfect for it. You've got Procol Harum, you've got MASH reruns, Field of Dreams, Christmas Carol, Wizard of Oz, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Lion King, Neil Diamond's Don't Think, Feel, which is a classic, which also really fits in. But you also have some, which I call higher culture things, references to Vivaldi and to Lauridsen's Lux Eterna and uh, Kierkegaard and Trotsky. I love the richness of this and all these cultural influences you're able to bring into that. Are those things that just came to you as you were writing, or did you say, I wonder if it'd be good to put that in here?
But it's part of the legacy of being a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was a kind of teacher where I couldn't teach one grade level for very long. I would get bored very easily. I dive into the curriculum, learn everything I could, teach my kids as much as I could. I always taught Socratically, so we're constantly in dialogue about
Yeah.
ideas. But then after I did that once or twice, I had to move on. And so I was constantly bouncing from one grade level to another, lower grades, middle school, high school. I taught college. And I love ideas. I love ideas. And there's a bird. I don't know if you know it. There's a bowerbird, and
Mm-hmm.
bowerbirds are so amazing because they find beautiful little things and they collect them all up to put outside of their nest. And so I'm like a bowerbird. All through my life, I've been collecting up things that were intriguing to me or beautiful or unusual. And I have this whole apartment in my head that's stuffed full of these things that I remember. God knows why, because I can't remember what I ate yesterday, but that's okay. And so and I, when I went to write, there were just all these things that were stuck in there, and somehow it worked. And again, it was very organic in lots of ways. For example, there were snippets of conversation that I heard 30 years ago that
Oh,
I saved, and they fit perfectly into the mouth of one of the characters in the book. So that's my explanation. It's this. My father was incredibly curious man. He studied and studied and studied, and he always was talking to us about all kinds of things, architecture and plants and the universe. And so I was just raised in an environment of curiosity about ideas, and over the years, some of them have stuck.
and isn't that wonderful how that happens?
It
And it
is.
also feels good that you're passing down some of the legacy as well through
Oh,
your
thank
writing.
you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it just occurred to me, but it seems perfectly to fit in with it. Oh my gosh, I'm going through. I'm glancing off to the side here from my notes because there's so many
Good.
things to talk about here. Um, One of the things you say, and this is interesting to me, you have a whiskered old man quotes, "Recovery isn't linear, but all progress is progress." There's some aphorisms in this book, and I think that's one of them that people should study or think about.
All progress is progress. I actually came up with that, I don't know, 20 or 30 years ago. It's a long time ago because because there were so many things that you do in life where you only get a little way and a little
Yeah,
way and a little way.
yeah,
It's the growth is incremental, and if you're a teacher, what we know is that you do some work that may not manifest itself for years and years and years. And so you have to be able to look at small steps and say, all progress is progress. And I think so many times in our culture, we shoot for the moon. We want the big aha. We want the fame. We want it, whatever it is. And in fact, then that isn't the way it usually happens. And then people feel like they've failed. And it isn't the case. It's that every time we make an effort, every time we grow a little, every time we expand our heart, that's progress. And we need to mark it as such.
wow. You're so much fun to talk to, and you've been so generous with your time today. I want to ask, is there anything we haven't covered that you want to make sure that our listeners get?
You know, I I do want to say about the title, um,
Yes.
that How to Be Dead. I mean, I knew that some people were going to be turned off by that title because it has the word dead in it. And
Hmm.
American culture is very um, reluctant to go there.
Yeah.
Um, that's partly why the subtitle, A Love Story, because it helps people feel a little safer with it. But I think the other part about How to Be Dead that I want people to understand is that even though that's what it's called, it's really a book about how to be alive.
Hmm.
The whole book is about the idea of life, and that life is a gift, and the appropriate response is gratitude. And that we can, even though Frances is a longevity guru and says she's going to live to 100, the truth is that we can live a lot in a little while, or we can live very little in a long time. It's a choice. And what we need to do is we need to focus on every single day, that every single day is precious, and invest ourselves in it. And especially at this time of life, I think it's a time for people to be bold, to embrace themselves, and maybe remember, who was I 25 years ago? Oh my God, there's that passion I used to have. There's that talent I used to have. There's that thing I used to love to do. And reach back and find that youthful self and regenerate those feelings and invest in ourselves and maybe be spectacular. And if not now, then when? So once again, repeating and it's really a line from there's a wonderful character in the book, a yogi. And when everybody else is puzzled about what do we do? Should we go on? Should we live? Should we not? Is life worth it? Is is the human race lost? He says, life is a gift. The appropriate response is gratitude. And that I want people to know, that's the message of this book.
Oh, that is beautifully summed up. We should mention websites.
I do have a website, laurelschmidt.com, and the book is available in all the usual venues. And if your listeners are audio book fans, then I think listening to Barbara Rosenblatt will be a treat for you, because when she read the book and I heard it the first time, even I was surprised by the text, and I knew the text by heart. So she's just magnificent. They actually call her the Meryl Streep of audiobook readers. So she brings such life to Frances and all the voices in it. So either, as a book where you can take your time, or audio, where somebody else can bring it to life. I hope that many people will enjoy it the way you have. And I want to thank you so much for your incredible embrace of the story.
Oh, thank you for making it all possible. Our guest today, Laurel Schmidt. The book is How to Be Dead, a love story. Gets the highest possible recommendation, 6 stars out of 5. Thank you so much.
Thank you.